I remained at the threshold of my newly furnished living room, observing strands of warm Edison bulbs as they swayed softly above the gathering of guests I had welcomed into a home I built on my own. The housewarming wasn't lavish, just relatives, a handful of close friends, and trays of food neatly arranged on folding tables draped in linen I had pressed earlier that morning. Billy darted between legs and bursts of laughter, his little dinosaur shirt already smeared with something red. Probably punch. He was 6. He trusted everyone. That was the part that frightened me most. If you've ever hosted a party while your chest tightened with something you couldn't quite name, you understand that sensation. The one where you smile politely, nod at conversations, and refill the ice buckets while your body vibrates with a frequency no one else can hear. I felt it the instant my sister walked in. She looked too polished. Hair flawless. Dress immaculate. Smile wide yet sharp, like a blade concealed beneath ribbon. She hadn't always seemed this way. Or perhaps she had, and I'd simply been too exhausted to notice. My sister Diane was younger by 3 years, which once meant I protected her. Somewhere along the way, that balance shifted. She began helping me after my husband died, assisting with paperwork, covering bills, making decisions I was too numb to face. I allowed it because grief makes you thankful for anyone who appears, even when they arrive with motives you're too shattered to recognize. But that night, something about her felt altered, deliberate, as though she had practiced her entrance. She drifted through the room while her husband followed quietly behind. A reserved man named Derek, who always seemed on the verge of apologizing for merely existing. Diane kissed cheeks, praised the paint colors, and brushed her fingers along the walls as though assessing them for some private measurement. Then she spotted Billy. "There's my favorite nephew," she said, lowering herself with that overly bright smile. The kind adults use when they're acting out affection rather than genuinely feeling it. Billy beamed back, unaware. To him, Aunt Diane meant presents, compliments, and someone who always remembered his favorite snacks. She rose holding a bright pink drink, lightly fizzing, topped with a paper umbrella, and a slice of pineapple, a mocktail. I had noticed her earlier in the kitchen mixing drinks, laughing with cousins, playing hostess inside my house as though it belonged to her. "Drink up, Billy," she said, offering it with both hands as if it were precious. "We made this especially for you." Her tone was honeyed. Her eyes were ice. From across the room, I stood holding a tray of appetizers and watched. Something deep in my gut, the instinct that kept my son safe through colic, fevers, and midnight asthma scares, began to scream. It wasn't her words. It was the way she studied him. The way her gaze fixed on his hands as he reached for the cup. The way her shoulders tightened, as if she were holding her breath. Waiting, not loving. Waiting. I set the tray aside. My hands remained steady, even though my pulse did not. I approached slowly, casually, like any mother fussing over her child. "Billy, baby, let me see your shoes real quick," I said, kneeling in front of him. He tilted his head. "They're fine, Mom." "Just humor me," I murmured, smiling up at him. My fingers toyed with his laces, pointless and obvious, but it gave me the distraction I needed. In one fluid motion, I exchanged Billy's cup with the identical one resting on the side table beside Derek. Same shade of pink, same fizz, same tiny umbrella. No one noticed. Diane was already turning away. Her focus pulled toward someone calling her from the kitchen. Billy hadn't wanted the drink anyway. Derek stood scrolling through his phone, unaware. I rose, carrying Billy's original cup, and took it into the kitchen under the guise of cleaning up. My heart pounded so violently against my ribs, I thought it might echo through the room. I poured the drink into a mason jar, sealed it tightly, and hid it at the back of the refrigerator behind leftover lasagna. Then I returned to the party, smiling as if nothing had occurred, because mothers don't unravel in front of strangers. We fall apart later, alone in the dark, where no one can see us break. I kept watching Derek. He absent-mindedly lifted the cup, still half absorbed in his phone, took a sip, set it down, then drank again. At first, nothing happened. Then, minutes later, maybe 5, his hand moved his throat. A small cough. Then another. His face flushed, then turned pale, as though the blood in his body couldn't decide where to settle. He blinked slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to to something resembling fear. "Derek," someone asked. He tried to speak, but the words came out slurred, thick, wrong. His knees gave out. The cup slipped from his grasp and shattered on the floor, pink liquid spreading across the hardwood like an open wound. The room exploded with noise. Voices overlapped. "Call an ambulance." "What happened?" "Did he choke?" I remained still, my eyes fixed on my sister. She froze, not with shock, but with recognition. Her gaze darted to Derek, then to Billy, then to the broken glass. I saw it. The flicker of calculation, the swift recalibration of a plan that had gone terribly wrong. She knew what had been in that drink. She knew because she had put it there, and she knew it had never been meant for him. Then she sprang into motion, her voice rising clear and controlled, commanding the room as if she had rehearsed this moment. He must be allergic to something. "Someone call 911. Derek, baby, stay with me." She was acting, every word too practiced, too smooth. She knelt beside him, her hands hovering just above his body, not quite touching, as though she were careful not to leave evidence. Her eyes flicked toward Billy again, searching, calculating. She needed to know whether he had taken a sip. The relief that crossed her face when she saw him standing there, cup-free and unharmed, lasted only a heartbeat, but it was unmistakable. That brief relief told me everything. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. They stabilized Derek, placed him onto a stretcher, and asked questions no one could answer. Diane rode beside him, pretending to be the shattered wife, her hand gripping his. Even though I had never once seen her hold it before tonight, the party slowly unraveled. Guests drifted out in waves, whispering confusion and offering empty reassurances I did not need. By midnight, the house had fallen silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and Billy's soft breathing from his bedroom down the hall. I sat on the kitchen floor with my knees pulled tightly to my chest, staring at the mason jar positioned in front of me. My sister tried to poison my son. The words felt too enormous to contain, too sharp to swallow, yet I could not allow them to tear me apart. Not yet, not while there was still work to be done. For the next 3 days, I moved like a shadow inside my own life. I smiled at Billy. I prepared breakfast. I responded to concerned relatives with vague, polite reassurances through text messages. But whenever I had a free moment, I was digging. I began with the paperwork. Years of it crammed into folders I had barely touched since my husband died. Insurance records, bank statements, legal forms I had signed while my mind was clouded with grief and my body functioned on pure autopilot. That was when I discovered it. A limited power of attorney document, supposedly signed when I was drowning in sorrow, medical debt, and single motherhood. Diana convinced me it was only a precaution, something in case I ever needed help managing things. Emergency support, she had called it. I read the document 3 times, then a 4th. The wording was slippery and expansive, filled with phrases like financial assistance and temporary guardianship, if deemed necessary. She had access, not complete control, not yet, but enough to transfer money, enough to make decisions if I were ever declared unfit. That was when the nausea struck. This was not merely about the house. It was about everything, my finances, my independence, my son. If Billy had drunk from that cup, if he had fallen ill, been hospitalized, if I had shattered the way any mother would, Diane could have stepped in. She could have portrayed me as unstable, incapable of coping, a threat to my own child. She could have taken him. I did not cry. I did not scream. Instead, I photographed every page, uploaded the images to a cloud drive, and locked the originals inside a fireproof safe I purchased the following day. Then I went to bank. The woman seated behind the desk had gentle eyes and wore a name tag that read Mary Ann. I sat across from her with a folder thick enough to justify the knot twisting in my stomach. I need to review all account activity, I said. Everything, transfers, withdrawals, anything associated with my name. She nodded and began typing. May I ask what you're searching for? Proof, I replied. An hour passed, perhaps longer. Mary Ann printed sheet after sheet, her expression gradually shifting from professional neutrality to visible concern. Finally, she slid a highlighted page across the desk. These transactions, she said carefully, were authorized under a secondary access agreement. Do you recognize them? I scanned the list. Transfers in increments of hundreds of dollars. Some labeled family support. Others categorized as emergency expenses, all routed to accounts I did not control. Who authorized this access? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Diane Carter, Marian said quietly. Your sister. It's connected to the power of attorney on file. The room seemed to tilt, not because I was surprised, but because seeing it in black and white made it undeniable. She had been stealing from me. Quietly, deliberately, for what felt like months, maybe even years. I had let it go on. But that day I was done. I told her right away that I wanted the access terminated immediately, and I demanded copies of absolutely everything. Marianne gave a short nod and said she would begin the paperwork at once. I left the bank carrying an accordion folder stuffed with documents and a kind of anger. So icy, it almost felt like perfect focus. This wasn't just about property. Diane didn't only want my house. She wanted my entire life. And worse than that, she was prepared to hurt my son to get it. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I started building a case. I gathered hospital medical records detailing what Dererick had ingested. Trace levels of a sedative. Enough to explain the symptoms he'd shown, but not enough to be fatal. Whoever did it had been precise. Careful. Deliberate. I collected bank statements showing the steady rhythm of transfers. Dates. Amounts, patterns, all aligning far too neatly with moments when I had been distracted, exhausted, or emotionally overwhelmed. I even kept a preserved sample of the mocktail, the same one I had quietly tucked away in the fridge, and took it to a private laboratory for testing. The results confirmed it, the same sedative. Then came the final piece. 3 days after the party, one of my cousins, one of the very few people I still trusted, contacted me. She had been in the kitchen that night, cleaning up, only half paying attention to conversations around her. She overheard Diane speaking in the hallway to someone else, her voice low and urgent, clearly assuming no one could hear. It was meant for the boy. My cousin hadn't planned to record anything. Her phone had been in her pocket, and the voice memo app had still been running from earlier. But it captured the exchange, muffled, yes, but clear enough. I listened to it once. Just once. After that, I saved the file in 3 separate places and never pressed play again. I didn't need to. Hearing my sister admit she had tried to drug my child one time was more than enough to understand exactly who she truly was. A week after the party, she showed up at my door. I watched her through the peephole, hair neatly pulled back, makeup soft and understated, dressed in that carefully chosen outfit that whispers I'm harmless, I'm kind, I'm family. I opened the door, but didn't move aside to let her in. Hey, she said gently, her tone smooth and rehearsed. I heard things got complicated. I just want to check on you and Billy. Her eyes drifted past me, searching for him. We're fine, I replied. Can I come in? Just for a minute? No. Her smile flickered. Just slightly, just enough. I'm worried about you. You've seemed distant. I know the party was stressful, and with everything you've been through... I said we're fine. She tilted her head, softening her voice into something syrupy and concerned. You don't look fine. You seem overwhelmed. Have you considered talking to someone? Getting support? There it was. The trap. The subtle implication that I was unstable, that I wasn't coping, that someone like her should step in. I have plenty of support, I told her. I also have lawyers now, and accountants, and a very clear understanding of what you've been doing. Her expression shifted. Not completely. She was too disciplined for that, but enough for me to see it. I don't know what you think. I think you tried to drug my son. I said quietly, evenly. I think you've been stealing from me, and I think you seriously underestimated how hard I'm willing to fight. She studied me in silence, calculating. Then she turned and walked away without another word. I locked the door and stood there trembling until Billy's voice floated in from the other room, asking if we could have pancakes for dinner. Yeah, baby, I answered, my tone steady again. We can have whatever you want. 2 days later, there was another knock. This time, it wasn't family. A woman dressed in business, casual, stood outside, holding a clipboard and wearing an official badge. "Miss Carter? I'm Leslie Nguyen with Child Protective Services. We receive a report concerning your son's welfare." My stomach plunged, but my face didn't reveal it. "Come in," I said. She stepped inside and began asking her questions. Standard ones, careful ones, about my mental health, my stability, whether I was feeling overwhelmed. I responded in a steady, composed voice when she asked whether Billy was safe. Then I passed a folder to her. "Before we continue," I said quietly, "you need to look at this." Inside were bank statements documenting financial exploitation, hospital records proving Derek's poisoning, laboratory results from the mocktail, recorded audio files, timestamps, and signed witness statements. Leslie read everything without speaking. Her face remained controlled, but I noticed a tension in her jaw. "This report," she said carefully, "was submitted by your sister." "I know." Her eyes locked onto mine. "Do you understand what this implies?" "She was trying to make me appear unstable so she could take custody of my son." I replied, "This was never about Billy's protection. It was about control." Leslie shut the folder. "I'll need to take this," she said, "and I'm recommending a full investigation, but not into you." After she left, I didn't fall apart. I didn't cry. I prepared Billy a snack, read him 3 bedtime stories, and tucked him like I always did. I was still his mother, and no one was going to take that away from me. The investigation progressed far more quickly than I anticipated. Accounts were frozen. Interviews were conducted. Legal hold were placed on assets Diane believed she had concealed. Her husband, Derek, the man who nearly lost his life drinking what had been intended for my child, filed for separation. Apparently, surviving your spouse's poisoning attempt clarifies a lot. Relatives began asking questions. At first, the inquiries were quiet and cautious, but soon they grew louder. Diane's responses, unclear, defensive, inconsistent, crumbled beneath documentation she hadn't realized I possessed. She attempted to portray me as unstable, vindictive, a grieving widow who had lost her sense of reality. But I had proof, real, legal, timestamp proof. And evidence doesn't need theatrics. It only needs truth. I stopped attending family gatherings. I no longer answered calls from relatives urging me to let it go or think about the family. I built boundaries that felt like solid walls, and I refused to apologize for them. One day, Billy asked why Aunt Diane didn't visit anymore. "Because some people aren't safe," I told him gently, "and it's my responsibility to protect you." He nodded with that quiet seriousness children have when they understand more than we realize. "Okay, Mom." The house remained mine. The accounts were reinstated. Power of attorney was revoked. Legal access was severed at every possible angle. Diane's name was removed from insurance policies, emergency contact lists, school documents, and medical files. She became a stranger who happened to share my last name, and I allowed it. The true victory was a revenge. It wasn't witnessing her world unravel, though I won't deny feeling a certain grim satisfaction as consequences finally caught up with someone who believed herself untouchable. The real triumph came the morning I woke up and understood that I owed her nothing. Not my silence, not my peace, not my forgiveness simply because we shared blood. I owed my son safety. I owed myself freedom. And I owed the truth the respect it deserved. So I kept the evidence. I maintained my boundaries. And I moved forward. That spring, Billy and I planted a garden, tomatoes, basil, and sunflowers that eventually grew taller than he was. He laughed when soil got beneath his fingernails, and I captured photos I'll treasure forever. The house no longer felt like a battleground. It began to feel like home. On days when doubt crept in, when I wondered whether I'd been too firm, too unforgiving, too distant, I remembered the cup, the one she handed my son with a smile, the one meant to take him from me, and I reminded myself, protecting your child is never excessive. Establishing boundaries is never extreme. Walking away from those who would harm you, even family, especially family, is not cruelty. It is survival. If you have ever faced a choice between preserving peace and preserving yourself, you already understand. Some will call you cold once you stop allowing them to burn you. They will label you paranoid when you refuse to ignore warning signs. They will say you are unforgiving when you refuse to pretend harm never occurred. Let them. The people who truly love you will never demand that you shrink to make others comfortable. They will ask whether you are all right, whether your son is all right, whether you need support. And when you answer, I'm okay, they will trust you. Sometimes I still think about that night, the party, the drink, the instant I chose to trust my instincts instead of my guilt. I think about how close I came to doubting myself, to convincing myself I was exaggerating, to handing that cup back and letting Billy drink from it. I reflect on all the small moments when I could have chosen denial instead of truth, and I'm grateful I didn't, because this is what I learned. Your instincts are not cruelty. They are not paranoia. They are not overreactions. They are your body's way of protecting you from things your mind hasn't yet processed. When it comes to your children, the term overprotective does not exist. There is vigilance, awareness, presence. Billy is 8 now. He does not remember the housewarming party, the cup, or the ambulance, and he doesn't need to. I carry those memories for him, as mothers do. What he does remember is the garden, the books we read together, the pancake dinners on nights when we invented rules simply because we could. He remembers feeling safe, and that, more than any revenge, reckoning, or legal triumph, is what fills me with pride. I did not merely shield him from a single poisoned drink. I protected him from a life in which love is conditional, where family prioritizes obligation over safety, and where silence is valued above truth. I taught him by living this truth, not preaching it. I showed him that one can walk away from harm, even when it wears a familiar face, that one can rebuild, even when others claim you are broken, that one can stand firm, even when the entire room urges you to sit down. The last time I saw Diane was at a family funeral, 2 years later. We did not speak. She remained on one side of the room. I stayed on the other, and Anne attempted to intervene, saying, "You're both adults. You're sisters." Surely, I smiled, polite, definitive. No, one word. No explanation. No justification. Just no. I owed her nothing. Neither my trauma as a teaching moment, nor a reconciliation story that would make others comfortable. I owed myself a life I rebuilt, the life where my son laughs without shadows, where I sleep without flinching at sounds, where trust is earned, not assumed. If that makes me the villain in someone else's narrative, so be it. I will be the mother who prioritizes her child over appearances, the woman who keeps receipts rather than keeping quiet, the one who walks away without looking back. Those who wanted me silent were never the ones who wanted me safe. I no longer live for their version of peace. I live for mine. So here's the lesson, if there is one. When someone reveals who they are, particularly someone who should love you, believe them, not their words, not their excuses, not their promises to do better. Believe their actions. Believe the patterns. Believe what they do when they think no one is watching. And when your gut screams, listen, it is not paranoia, bitterness, or holding a grudge. It is wisdom earned through survival, and it may save your life, your child's life, or your future. I did not receive closure from Diane. I gained distance, which was better. I did not get an apology. I obtained evidence, which was stronger. I did not receive family unity. I secured safety, which was everything. Billy will start middle school next year. He wants to try soccer. He talks about space, dinosaurs, and whether dogs dream in color. He is smart, funny, kind, alive. And every single day, I am grateful I trusted the part of me that sensed something was wrong, the part that did not wait for proof before acting, the part that chose protection over politeness. That part saved us both. So, if you are reading this and something in your life feels wrong, if love from someone feels conditional, controlling, or dangerous, trust that feeling. You do not need a poison cup to justify walking away. You do not need a legal case to prove your right to safety. You do not need anyone's permission to protect yourself or your loved ones. You only need to decide that your peace matters more than their proximity, and then act not with anger, not with drama, but with clarity, boundaries, and the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you deserve better. I did, and so do you. The house remains mine. The garden continues to grow. Billy still laughs. My sister, wherever she is, Whatever story she tells herself, no longer has access to any of it. My money, my son, my life. She sought proof that I was weak, unstable, easy to control. I gave her proof that I was not. And that proof did not come through confrontation or revenge. It came through documents, boundaries, and a mother who refused to be shaken. That is a nature of quiet power. It does not shout, it does not perform. It simply stands firm, and it prevails.